Roll call. As I look, everybody's here at the dais. Agenda items for discussion is review and discuss recommended policy changes in classification and compensation administrator. To present, yes, Ms. Rudy? Hello, is that working? Yours is not working?
Is it on?
Is it on?
Is it green? Is there a green light there or any?
Is there a button to push right below the?
We are having trouble tonight, aren't we, with our microphones?
Where's Eddie?
Do we have a hand microphone we can give to her?
Yeah,
Okay, is this one working? Hello?
I tell you what, can you call somebody here to help us?
Test.
Test.
I think he's
Test.
going out to tell him.
Brian,
Test.
that one's working. Eddie. Oh, Eddie.
Oh, this modern technology, huh?
No, it's not working at all.
That one reaches too.
Is this one working?
Yeah, it's working.
Is it? I guess ask
Test.
the ask the people in the back if they can hear you. Turn around.
Can you hear in the back?
No,
microphone?
I didn't think it was working up here, and I've got hearing aids on, so I didn't think so.
Well, we'll start.
All
And
right.
I'll try to talk louder.
Just talk loudly. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Osborne, and council members. I want to congratulate and welcome Councilmember Barber to the council. It's exciting. The last time we brought policy updates to the City Council was back in October of 2009. The city periodically reviews and revises policies based on current labor law changes, implementing best practices, or sometimes it's just rewording for clarification. If 3 different people read a policy and get 3 different interpretations, it's probably time to clarify it or reword it. As I go through these policy changes, feel free to ask questions at any time. So just go ahead and stop me. On our first slide in sections A and B, those were added to our administrative policy by outside counsel to protect the city. They felt it was best that we added those into our administrative policies. Section C was added by the city, just to clarify, even though at the end of our administrative guidelines we have a table that talks about policies being set by council and guidelines being set by the city manager. We just wanted this clarified that the city manager does not have the authority to make exceptions to city policy. Sections B3 and B6, those were just changed to reflect the new pay structures that police and fire have, that they now have 5% between steps. Section B7, this was added because temporary assignments, they don't have property rights to those temporary assignments, and so they are not able to appeal them, but they do have the right to grieve if they feel like a assignment pay was not added properly or was taken away. They do have that, and they can grieve that up to the deputy city manager. Section B7.1, we're just clarifying their FLSA status in that one for an employee who is non-exempt. If they're still doing their full exempt duties plus some, or their full non-exempt duties and some exempt duties, we will still pay them hourly. For section B8, we're clarifying there was no change to the intent and policy. We just changed the wording a little bit. For section C2, we added non-exempt to that because exempt or salaried employees, they don't have to ask permission to work off hours. They can work as many hours as they want. For section C7, we deleted the section on call-out pay for the police department and made it consistent with the entire city. In section C11 for paramedic pay, it's paid out to our hourly employees in pay to their base pay and not a flat amount. So we changed that to reflect how we have to pay them based on the Fair Labor Standards Act. Telecommunication trainer pay is an assignment, and while it's still in policy 200, we also moved it to the guideline. Assignment pay may remove, again, we added assignment pay may be removed at any time, and it's not appealable. The next section is something that we've added. We have assignment pay for sworn positions, but we didn't have anything in the policy that allowed us to pay assignment pay for non-sworn positions. So this is something that's just added, and it's in unique circumstances and will be used very rarely. We've added in section C13, we have some new positions, some new titles that have happened over the last couple years that we would like to pay assignment pay. The police assistant's one of them, and then our 2 property and evidence positions. In C14,
Excuse me, there's a question. Councilman Stipp?
I knew I had one more earlier that I didn't get it. What is a police? Is the police assistant the new civilian positions we just approved? Okay.
yes.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Okay.
For hazmat material skill pay for Tier 1 and Tier 2, again, this is just defining it as an hourly instead of a flat amount since it's paid out hourly. For shift differential pay in the police department, we added that if they need to serve it for 4 consecutive shifts in order to get the difference in pay. If they're normally on a first shift and they work a second shift once, they wouldn't get shift differential for that, but it has to be 4 consecutive shifts, not days, but 4 shifts they work in a row. This was added by outside legal counsel for protected class. We added veteran status, pregnancy, and genetic information. We clarified the next statement.
Excuse me, Jeannie.
Yes. Molly?
What do you mean by genetic?
Genetic information, this is kind of something that's rare, that's done by private companies. I don't know of any that does it, but basically they test you for any kind of disorders that you may have, genetic disorders that would cost them more money down the road. And then that information can't be used against you in the hiring process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
medical thing.
It's a good question, though.
Well, thank you. I had not heard of that particularly. Okay.
The next statement, just a few words were added to clarify it, but I put the whole statement in there as far as providing accommodation for disabled employees if necessary. Section C, we also have this in the guideline under our records, but outside legal counsel felt it was important to also put in our employment policy. Section D, we clarified employees in their first 12 months are at will. This is also in guideline 340. Outside legal counsel felt we should put it in policy 300 as well. An employee who is terminated on a non-disciplinary basis due to layoff has no rights to the appeal process. That's also in our guideline that talks about layoffs, but we felt it was important to put it here. Sometimes we're taking duplications out, but sometimes we're putting them in just for more information. If the employees go somewhere, we feel like that might be where they're looking for that. We clarified that certain contractual positions serve at the pleasure of the mayor and council, and you're aware of that, but we thought it was important to put in policy. This is something new that we've added. Department directors may allow employees to forfeit vacation or compensatory leave in lieu of suspension as a disciplinary action. We put that in there as an option. Some think, well, what's the discipline in that? Sometimes what's really difficult is when we have constant staffing, having somebody off for 2 or 3 days for suspension could cause overtime for the city, and sometimes it's difficult to fill that. So this is solely at the department director's discretion to be able to, it's not the employees, but the employee does have to agree to it, but the department director has that option if it could cause undue hardship to the city and the employee is okay with that.
Mayor,
Yes. Bill?
since these are coming to us, this was a discussion that I actually had with Wynette this morning, our human resources director. Personally, with this particular item, I would like to see there be another connection to someone else in staff, whether it be a deputy city manager or the city manager, to agree with this. We've had instances in the past, and Chief, I'm going to single out the police department because that's the most recent one that I remember, where an employee was disciplined, given suspension, but then those days it was a day after Thanksgiving, or so. It was not it wasn't really a disciplinary suspension. It was more of a, here, we're going to make this convenient for you. While the authoritarian in me says a disciplinary action is a disciplinary action and it should be technically a punishment. I also get we have a business to run and we need to make sure we do that. And I like the ability for us to have it, but I would like it to be not just on any one particular person's discretion, that we have somebody else from management sign off on that. I'm just throwing that out
So
there.
if
So
we added deputy city manager's approval or something like that?
yeah, department director may allow the employee with the approval of a deputy, or however you guys want to word it. But I'd like to see someone else involved in that loop. And I don't care honestly, I don't care who it is, just as long as it's two people, not one,
But he should be someone out of the department.
and not their supervisor. Yeah.
Do I hear any of the other council weigh in on this? Yes, Sherry?
I agree with that, but I do have another question that kind of raised thinking about that. So if someone, your day after Thanksgiving made me think of this, if someone uses this in lieu of a disciplinary action, they can't, when they're actually working, they're going to get paid for that. They wouldn't be able to get overtime during the time that they
No,
would get
we would
the
just take
disciplinary.
those hours from their leave bank.
Okay.
So if it was for 2 days, they would work the whole week and make 40 hours of pay, but 16 hours would be taken away from their leave bank.
Okay, but if that 40 hours, would they be able to get then overtime if they had normally gotten overtime during that time? It just doesn't seem like much of a punishment, I guess, if you can still.
It doesn't.
But I'm getting we've got to staff it. So
No,
I think,
I understand that. I'm just doesn't
but
seem.
that's what I kind of struggled with. This is okay. I've already got 20 hours of comp time, so go ahead and take it away. You know, if
Like on a
punish
vacation anyway.
me away all you want. You know, I've already worked it. So I think if we're going to do it, I like the idea of giving the director a bit of flexibility to make that decision. Personally, I'd just like to make sure that that's not being. The door for abuse could be opened without at least someone else signing off on it. And that was only my suggestion.
I'm fine with
Any
that.
other comments?
I could go either way. I mean, it's not a sore subject with me, so I mean, to add, it's fine. If not, it's fine too. So
I agree with Councilmember Stipp and Councilmember Laurentano.
All right, looks like we have the consensus on this, if we could rework that one.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Section D1, we've changed that to reflect hours instead of days. Now that we have flex schedules, we have employees that are 8-hour days, 9-hour days, 10-hour, 12, 24. In our definitions, we state that a workday, unless otherwise defined, is 8 hours, but then no one has to question it. So we're trying to do that throughout policies or guidelines to refer to what it really means. Section 7F, we added crimes victims leave. That is not paid leave. However, I want to read to you what this covers. I think this is very important. It says, this is in the guidelines. So our policy, of course, states what the policy is, and usually the guidelines has the details. And crimes victim leave is the city will provide leave for an employee who has been the victim of a crime, or an employee who is the immediate family member of a crime victim who is killed or incapacitated, to take time off to attend proceedings related to the prosecution of the criminal. So we allow time off without pay. However, they can use compensatory time or vacation time to cover that if they have it, but their job will be protected. The last one on this slide, G11, clarifies personal leave without pay as it relates to Family Medical Leave and Americans with Disabilities Act. That's totally separate, and we just clarified in there that that doesn't pertain to those two in this case. For Policy 700, this has been revised to reflect new residency requirements for department directors and above. The city manager is required to reside within the city, but the other 3 bullet points, basically those were changed due to the economic conditions and the challenges sometimes with people being able to sell their homes to move to the city. Section B, again, the veteran status, pregnancy, and genetic testing were added to protected categories. And then outside legal counsel said that we should change the wording to must as far as an employee reporting unlawful harassment or activity. Section K, this has always been in our policy, and it's been moved from the guideline to the policy.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Can you, I actually questioned this one, and it may have been standard in the past, but it gathered my attention. And I guess I need some examples of this. I mean, my thoughts, especially with the non-working hours, if an employee, for example, is a mechanic, and at home he comes up with some kind of tool that he realizes is going to make a job easier, maybe at the city, but he invents it himself at home, and he goes out to get his own patent for this. He should be allowed that intellectual property, and he should be allowed that patent. The city should have no rights over it. So I question this one. So can you help me out with examples as why non-working hours would be part of this?
I can give you an example. I don't know if this will be helpful. If I'm a children's book author and I write children's books, the city is not going to expect that they have copyrights to the books that I write. But let's say I work in human resources and I'm a trainer for the city, and I've been busy all week, and next week I'm expected to train on harassment prevention. And so over the weekend, I develop curriculum, and next week I teach it, and for the next 6 months that I teach it. Well, I developed that curriculum off city time per se, because I wasn't paid for that, but I developed it in my position as a trainer, and I did it for the city because of my position. So that's why we use non-working hours, but it may...
Joe, go ahead.
I'm kind of along the same line as the vice mayor. I can see some situations where just because you are who you are, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a writer, could develop something off hours, and I don't think we should hold that against them as far as the money. Now, there's some reason why you put that in there. I've got a question for the attorney to protect the city, but I can see the possibility where you could actually develop some things if you just happen to have a skill set. What if you're a mechanic, okay, and you come up with something like you had said, offsite? I just got a problem off hours. On hours, 100% we do there. Off hours.
I'm just curious how you would prove that.
That's the problem, is how do you prove that?
Yeah, that's the legal part of it is what
The
I
problem is,
question.
how do you prove whether it was working hours, non-working hours? Did you develop part of the skill set while at work, develop to fruition off hours? We can certainly develop this policy any way the council directs us to.
Yeah.
'Cause there are different models out there. I mean, one model is anything you develop at work obviously belongs to the employer. Off hours, if there's some crossover, you can go patent it, but you give a license back to your employer. So
Yeah, well, I guess if you're using the resources, the financial resources of the city, and you're using employees of the city to help you develop this, and the paper, and the desk, and the telephone, then I say that can be proven easily.
And your know-how.
So
Well,
I guess
you're
that
also developing
distinction.
know-how at work, though,
Yeah.
too. So if you develop that know-how, isn't there a property interest in the employer? There's
But the know-how
a
is
lot of
kind
different
of
ways to do
difficult
this.
to prove, isn't it?
It's not a huge. I mean, this is
Yeah.
not a huge issue for the city. I mean, if we were a university, we'd be having a completely different conversation because
Certainly.
we don't have employees. Well, maybe we do, developing the next Google. I don't know. But I mean, there are some easy fixes. They grant us a license. Training materials is a real life example that could happen for us, where we might want to reap the benefit of the investment we've made in our employees in giving them the training and the experience. So if you're uncomfortable with non-working hours, we can tweak that. I would recommend that we require that there be a license back to the city on whatever you develop. But we can fix that if you're uncomfortable with that.
I think we have general consensus. We'd like the wording certainly different than what we see up here.
Okay. We can do that.
Dealing with patents that I have had to deal with my husband, I really, I guess, am strongly on the side of a person that has developed something, and so I would appreciate you changing that. Thank you.
We can do that.
Although I understand the patent world is notorious for people taking credit for other people's patent. Yes, that's what I've been told anyway.
Okay, Section C of Policy 800. The timeframes were removed from the policy because they were already in the guideline, and we didn't want to duplicate, and if the timelines change them in both places. So
Be sure to keep that microphone
taking
on.
out duplication. Section D, this was added because there's been a lot of changes to the Peace Officers Bill of Rights regarding the appeal process and discipline, and we wanted to refer to it in our policy because for our peace officers, we will be referring to this when we are doing discipline for our sworn police. Section D of Policy 1000, we deleted HIV because it's not really necessary to distinguish that out from any other protected illness. So these policies, we changed them, again, as I stated in the beginning, to help us to make our policies better, to make them current with current labor laws, to implement best practices, and just to tweak the wording to make them better. I will be bringing the policies back to you on consent on December 10th, and we will make the changes that you've requested, and hopefully you approve of them. And does anyone have any other questions?
Yes, any other questions? Questions?
No, good.
Questions? No, that was great presentation, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to start with our regular meeting. Are you ready? Meeting adjourned, work session. Now, I'm